My name is Victor Furman. Some call me the Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me now and we will explore these topics and so much more with fascinating guests, authors, and experts who will guide us to Destination Unlimited. Is there a way of tweaking formerly subconscious brain processes to eliminate self-destructive behaviors, enhance health and vitality, and supercharge success potential? My guest this week on Destination Unlimited, Ravinder Taylor, says this may be achieved through mind training. For the past 30 years, Ravinder has been researching and analyzing self-help modalities. She has utilized her learning in thousands of interactions with individuals seeking guidance for breaking through blocks to success in their lives. Many have praised her insights and reported great success when following her recommendations. In addition to working alongside her husband, Eldon Taylor, on each of his books, Ravinder is the co-author of more than 200 personal motivation audio programs and 2 books, Motivational Nudges to Empower Your Life and Peripheral Perception via Subliminal Stimuli. Her website is ravindertaylor.com, and she joins me this week to share her new book, co-authored with Eldon Taylor, Mind Training, The Science of Self-Empowerment. Please join me in welcoming to Destination Unlimited, Ravinder Taylor. Welcome, Ravinder.
Thank you so much, Victor. Thank you for inviting me on your show. This is truly an honor.
Ravinder, congratulations on your just published new book, Mind Training, The Science of Self-Empowerment, that you co-authored with your husband, Eldon Taylor, who's graced this show before. Please share with us your path and how it led to your partnership and work with Eldon.
You know, I think there was a great deal of synchronicity in my path. My degree's in microbiology. And I was working in a path lab. I was very hard science at that time. If it, couldn't be proved scientifically, it wasn't true. But then there were all these flyers that were posted up around the hospital talking about a special presentation on hypnosis and hypnotherapy. Lots of people in the hospital went. The auditorium was absolutely packed. Because it was being put on by the hospital, I took that as kind of an endorsement for what was going on. And I found the information absolutely fascinating. Some of the stories he shared, how the mind works, what goes on. But also for me, just coincidentally, everyone he picked to demonstrate certain hypnotic techniques on, they happened to be people from my own lab. Now, there were 70 people who worked in my lab, and they were sprinkled around this huge auditorium that was absolutely packed. So it was totally coincidence, but that was confirmation to me that they weren't shills. As a consequence of this presentation and the power of the mind and the way the mind can sabotage you, I said I found it really fascinating. So I went on to do a course in hypnosis and psychotherapy. And as I just completed the 3-year course, there was a special presentation put in. A special lecturer came in, and that lecturer happened to be Eldon Taylor, which is how we met. His presentation was very science-based, very down to earth, but his spirituality was apparent to everybody as well. So he didn't focus on the spiritual, but it was obviously there, and we were kindred spirits. But as I walked into the classroom, the very first day, because it was a 2-day workshop, as I walked into the classroom, I heard a voice, didn't understand a word of what this voice was saying, because it was a strong American accent. It's like, I didn't understand it, but I recognized the voice. So when you talk about synchronicity or special events or something, I just recognized the voice in my soul. That there isn't any other way to say it. It gets very spiritual there. Eldon and I are from very, very different backgrounds. I was born in India, brought up in England. My family were Sikhs. Eldon is, significantly older than me, brought up in America, just vastly different experiences. But both of us knew we were supposed to be together. That's the only way I can say it. It sounds weird, but we knew we were supposed to be together. So it wasn't big romance, flowers, unicorns, all of that kind of stuff. It was just that inner knowing we were supposed to be together. So we learned how to be together, and we enjoyed the same kinds of things. We both enjoy the learning about the power of the mind. We both like the spiritual aspect to everything. So it's spirituality with our feet firmly on the ground, and we are both in sync like that.
So in essence, coming from your scientific background, would you say that you were soulmates?
Yeah, I wouldn't. I'm not saying that from a scientific background. I'm saying that just from our life experience. Yes, absolutely. And in a more realistic way, being a soulmate doesn't mean that life is all hunky-dory all the time. Relationships take work. They take compromise. So yeah, he has to come watch chick flicks with me. I have to go watch action movies with him. We compromise in lots of different areas. But yeah, I would say categorically we are soulmates.
Interesting that you are both ordained interdenominational ministers, and my wife, Lori Sue Brockway, and I are both ordained interfaith ministers. What led you to the calling?
Eldon had done the course first of all, and he talked about how much he gained from it, how spiritual the process was in doing it. And I suppose that's what made me want to, do the course as well, was just based on his experiences. And I did find it very spiritual. It opened my mind and my heart in ways that other things haven't.
Now, you're the president of Progressive Awareness Research. Please share with us the mission of this organization.
We're all about finding tools and techniques to enhance the human experience. That's it in a nutshell. Our process is very science-based. We believe that we can all do better. I think everybody does, wouldn't you say, Victor? We all have inside of us that feeling that we could do better. And progressive awareness is about exploring ways that we can achieve that. So why aren't we as successful? Why do we employ self-destructive patterns? Because we all do. In some area or another, we all employ self-destructive patterns. It can be something small. So if someone's on a diet and they've decided they're not going to have dessert anymore, but then they have a really difficult day at work, or they have some good news. It can be anything. But then they believe that they deserve a treat, and so they will break the diet, which is a self-destructive pattern, because you have this outward goal that says, I wish to lose weight, but inside you've got these competing goals that say, I deserve a treat either because I was hurt, or I deserve a treat because I've achieved something good. So that, that destroys your outward goal. And there are a great number of these subconscious processes going on. They dictate what it is that we do. Lots of research that has been done that indicates there is activity in the subconscious mind before we make a choice. In fact, technicians using fMRI can predict what choice you will make. And it's generally a choice between, are you going to push a button with the right hand or the left hand? Technicians can predict what you will choose up to 7 seconds ahead. So your choices that you think are your own are being made by your subconscious mind. And therefore, we have to look at the subconscious mind in order to change self-destructive behaviors, to choose for ourselves. If you don't take charge of your own subconscious mind, that is where the whole element of free will can come in. Everything that you do is has a precursor to it. It has an influence. So your choices today may be dependent upon something that happened in the past. But if you take charge of your subconscious mind, if you think about how it gets programmed, if you learn how it gets programmed, the types of things to look out for, how you can change it, and how you can program it yourself, that is where, as I said, that is where free will comes into play. That's where you have the ability to become your own person. You're not dictated by your past experiences or the programming of society, the TV that you watch, the people that you hang out with. All of these things have an influence, and progressive awareness is about changing that, actually taking conscious control over programming your subconscious mind. And the idea is to eliminate self-destructive patterns, enhance health and vitality, supercharge success potential, basically to get out of your own way. The mind's incredibly powerful. The placebo effect shows clearly how well you can heal yourself with the right kinds of beliefs, and the right kinds of beliefs influence all of these areas. And that's what we focus on. We look for tools to automate that process. We try to teach how people learn these ideas in the first place so that you can guard against them.
And we're going to be talking about some of those techniques and the inspiration, I guess, behind your book, Mind Training, The Science of Self-Empowerment.
I came across a research paper that talks about a 12-minute meditation that was having some fabulous results. It was improving cognitive ability, improving mood, just across the board. It was helping people feel better. It had great promise for, dementia patients, in helping them, as I said, improve their cognition. The paper was very, very solid. I looked at the actual paper. I looked at the research behind it. The results were very solid. It was very scientifically based. It was published in peer-reviewed journals. But I found elements of it, or the explanations of it, that were actually wrong. My own upbringing, my own background, I have experiences in certain areas, and I knew that what they were saying as their explanations for it was wrong. And that got me thinking. And so I started work on a book myself, and the preliminary title for the book I was working on was Bottling the Placebo Effect, The Real Secret to Health, Wealth, and the Fountain of Youth. And in a way, I was being a bit cheeky there, because a great deal of self-help, there are lots of books out there. A great deal of it, they simplify the process too much. So they have these big promises and they give you techniques, but they don't teach you how to do the technique or what it means or how you can tweak it. They just give you rituals to go through. You do step 1, step 2, step 3, and all these magical things will happen. And I objected to that. So I started working on my book, in my head, and playing around with some ideas. And Eldon was also working on the mind training book. He's an accomplished author, as you well know. He's a New York Times bestseller. He's written about 17 books. Most of his books became bestsellers in different categories. So he got the outline of his book done well before I did. And so he handed that to me, and I realized how much overlap there was between the two, which makes sense, really, because the two of us work together. But there was a difference in approach. And so we decided to combine the books. So I took the framework of what Eldon had done, and on top of that, I put my own experiences, my own passions, my own research over the top of that. And we ended up creating a very practical book, because every chapter in it has exercises that you can use right away that can make positive changes. In some instances, there's an exercise in there that I share that can help you drop your blood pressure within minutes. It can help you feel happier right away, how to boost those happy brain chemicals, so that you feel happier right away. So there are tools in there that will have an immediate kind of effect, and there are tools that are there for more long-term kinds of effects. But that was how it came about. We were both playing around with ideas, and then we just decided to combine it into one to make a more complete book.
And your subtitle is The Science of Self-Empowerment. How do you define self-empowerment?
Self-empowerment is when you have the tools. It's not when you trust a teacher or a guru or whatever to tell you how to do certain techniques. When you have the information for yourself, when you understand the science behind it, you know what was involved and how they came to the conclusions that they did, then you have the ability to take the results from it and personalize it for yourself. That's what self-empowerment is when you take charge of your own self-help journey. And it is a journey. There isn't, click of your fingers and everything's going to be hunky-dory right away. It is a journey. But when you can take charge of it yourself, when you can delve into your own subconscious mind and start getting answers from it, the fact is, Victor, the more you question your own subconscious mind, the more you understand how the information gets in there, and the more you question it, the more it will reveal the answers to you. Lots of self-destructive patterns, they happen because your subconscious mind is trying to protect you from something. It wants to protect you from pain and shame and guilt. It doesn't want you to experience those things again. But oftentimes it's using information that is old. It doesn't hold. So you were embarrassed as a child when you had to do a speaking event. Well, you're not a child anymore. So when you have to do a presentation at work, there isn't any need to have that kind of protections. But having this fear from childhood could make it impossible for you. Public speaking is the kind of thing that lots of people have problems with. I most certainly did. But the more you question your subconscious mind, the more you understand how the information gets in there, the more it will reveal the answers. So it's a journey. Mind training is definitely a journey, but it's a journey to self-empowerment. It gives you the information, it gives you the tools, then it says, go away and adjust it so that it fits you and your lifestyle and your goals.
You say there are several commonly shared stories that are more myth than fact. Please share some of these and why they can do more harm than good.
Yes, there are. And that's where I start off with in mind training. It's the rest of the story that really counts. So let me give you a couple of examples. The first one you may have heard of, with Roger Bannister, he broke the 4-minute mile in 1954. The way the story is shared frequently by people who teach self-help, motivational kinds of stuff is that up until 1954, people did not believe that the 4-minute mile could be broken, but Bannister did that. And because Bannister managed it, everybody knew that it was now possible. They now had the belief. And as a result, John Landry broke Bannister's record just 6 weeks afterwards. And since then, from the last time I looked at the numbers, around 1,500 people have broken the 4-minute mile. So it's the power of belief. That's what all of these teachers will say. People didn't believe it was possible. Now they believe it's possible. So it's happening. So all you have to do is believe it's possible. Sounds wonderful. Sounds really inspirational, but it's really incomplete. Anyone who has tried to achieve a goal. I've done the same thing. I ran a marathon in 2018, but it takes a great deal of training. For me, my training began in 2013. Up to that point, I had not run at all. in decades. I may have run across a parking lot. I may have run when I was playing with the children, but I hadn't done any serious running at all. And so my training began with working towards a 10K. So the training begins with you run for 1 minute, you walk for 3, you run for 1 minute, and then you build it up and up. And I remember being so proud. Eldon did the training with me at the time. Both of us were so proud when we got to the 10-minute run. So you run for 10 minutes, you walk for 1, you run for 10, you walk for 1. But it takes working up to it. So with the story with Roger Bannister, yes, he broke the 4-minute mile in 1954, but his training began in 1946. And for John Landry, it started in 1949. They had to believe that it was possible, or you're not going to try. But that's what Guinness Book of Records is all about, is people who believe that they can do something. But then it takes a great deal of grit. It takes determination. It takes sacrifice. You have to be out training when maybe your partner's in bed sleeping still. Tom Brady, there's a speech that he gave that I saw recently. You're familiar with Tom Brady and his 7 Super Bowl wins. I mean, he's just phenomenal. But he talks about how hard it is. You have to work hard at it. You have to go out and train. You have to sacrifice. You have to watch your diet. You have to miss lots of social events. You sacrifice your family. It's hard work. So the simplified story of just believe and you can achieve wonderful things too. No, it takes a great deal of action. But when it's shared as just believe, then people think there's something magical out there, that the world is just going to open up and bring them stuff. And it's not. It's incomplete. You have to do the work behind it as well. So that's the first one. I think that is really damaging. The other one that I look at is fire walking. Fire walking is often done at the end of a self-improvement course workshop, and it's supposed to demonstrate that the people participating have now gained the power through the training that has been provided, and they prove that they've gained the power because they do the fire walk. Now, there's a lot of science behind a fire walk. There are certain woods that burn hotter than others. You have to tap down the ashes. Maybe you sprinkle ashes on the top of it. You teach the people to work with confidence. You see, if you run across a fire walk, your footsteps are going to be heavier, so you're going to sink deeper, so you increase the chance of burning your feet. If you walk slowly and hesitantly, once again, your feet are going to sink down and burn more. But when you walk confidently, you can do it. And especially as they've tapped down the ashes, put some ashes on the top, they've got the right kind of wood so that it looks impressive, but it doesn't burn so hot. And you can demonstrate some of these things yourself. Lots of cooks are very aware that, you can take something out of the oven, you can touch hot food really easily if you use light fingers. We know what we're supposed to do. And so when you look at fire walking and maybe compare that to walking across ice, we walk differently when there's lots of snow on the ground and it's slippery. We will walk slower, walk more flat-footed. Our arms will be out, ready to balance us. There's a great deal of additional science that goes behind it. So the fire walk itself, it sounds impressive, it looks really cool, but it's incomplete. It's incomplete. And I think it's damaging when someone says, oh, I've got all the ability now, I'll just go away and do it. What happens with, these types of motivational seminars? People come out of it feeling really hyped up, and you ask them about it. Surveys have been done. You ask them about it and, oh yeah, this was absolutely wonderful. But then you question them 6 weeks afterwards, and the vast majority of them will say things like, well, they haven't started it yet. It doesn't quite fit their routine. Didn't quite work. Perhaps they need to attend another seminar in order to really get the programming in. And it's not anything to do with that. It's to do with not understanding the science behind it all, the applications that go on. It takes work. So I think these things give people a false sense of hope that if they just do X, Y, Z without understanding the details behind it, then everything is going to be wonderful in their lives. And then they get disappointed and then they throw everything out, which is a real shame.
My guest is Ravinda Taylor. She's co-author with her husband Eldon Taylor of the brand new book, Mind Training, The Science of Self-Empowerment. Ravinder, please share with our listeners where they can get the book and find out more about you and this amazing work.
The book's available at all fine bookstores. If they don't have it in stock, they can order it. You can get it from Amazon, Barnes & Noble, just wherever you like to buy your books. My website is ravindertaylor.com.
And we'll be back with more after these words on the Om Times Radio Network.
The cutting edge of conscious radio, Om Times Radio, IOM FM. Om Times Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. Om Times, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Back on Destination Unlimited, my guest this week, Ravinda Taylor. We're talking about her brand new book, Mind Training, The Science of Self-Empowerment. You had talked about placebo effect earlier in the show. You say that the placebo response provides some of the best evidence for both the power of the mind and enculturated beliefs. Please explain.
It does indeed. Most people are familiar with the placebo effect. Placebo effect is the thing that they will control for when they are testing out the efficacy of different drugs. And the placebo effect is where your mind plays a role in the outcome of whatever medication that you're working with. But what they have found with the placebo is that if you administer a capsule as opposed to a pill, the results will be stronger. If you can change the color of the capsule, and that plays a role as well. If you have an injection as opposed to a capsule, the results will be even stronger. People seem to believe that if it looks like it's going to work, then it will work, and therefore it does work. So that's, the idea behind the placebo effect. What I found fascinating when I dug deeper into the research with placebos is to do with some of the cultural effects of it. So, for example, there was one part that I found a little bit disquieting, really. But in America, African Americans, Black Americans, will invariably look at a white capsule as being a stimulant, whereas a black capsule is going to be, help them to relax. But for Caucasian people, it's the other way around. It is the black capsule that is a stimulant and the white capsule that will help them to relax. And, I found that a little bit, that has to speak to something a whole lot deeper there. But when you look across countries, you'll find that in Germany, the placebo response for hypertension meds is low. In Brazil, when they look at the placebo response for gastric medicines, there it can be low, but in Germany, it's really high. So this is great evidence for both, the idea of the power of enculturation and where we get all our beliefs, and also the power of the mind. So it has a double effect in there. The mind has this great ability to heal you. And as we see with placebo, nocebo effect is where it can heal you, but it can hurt you as well. If you believe a particular med that you're going to take is going to have a bad effect on you, then it can create that very bad effect. They actually tested that out with people with asthma. I was really surprised when I heard about this research, but they took people with asthma, gave them a bronchodilator, but told them it was a bronchoconstrictor, and it worked like a constrictor and not as a dilator. So they had more problems breathing, and the other way around as well. So that shows you quite how powerful the mind is and how much influence it has over your body. And it shows you how important it is what your beliefs are. So there are cultural beliefs out there, across the board. When you look at enculturation in general, you look at aging, there's great deal of belief out there that aging also means becoming decrepit. And so you can have those people who, I have people coming up to me. I don't know if you have the same thing, Victor, but people, in my own peer group will say things like, we're getting older now, we have to slow down, we can't do as much. And I go, cancel, cancel, cancel.
Absolutely.
I don't want to have those beliefs in my mind. I am going to be as young as possible for as long as possible. Your beliefs play a huge role. So what happens is, if you believe that getting older means becoming decrepit and you have to take care of yourself and you have to slow down, well, you stop using your body as much. You don't exercise as much. You don't go for long walks. You don't move your body, and it will get stiff in the process. Your body stiffens up, your flexibility gets lost, and it all comes from this belief. So it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. You believe getting older means becoming decrepit, and so because you believe it, that's exactly what happens. And that is a huge example of the power of enculturation in influencing the kind of life that you experience.
How does the question of free will come into play with this?
Maybe not so directly with placebo. Yes, it does. I just haven't thought of the two connected in that way. Free will is this idea that all of your actions, all of your choices have some precursor to them, an event, an influence that is in the past. Robert Sapolsky, in his book Determined, he covers it. It's a very extensive book. It's a really good book. I would recommend that everybody read the book. He's very, very thorough. But he talks about all the ways that events in the past or genetics can influence what it is that you do, your enculturation, your beliefs. Everything has a precursor to it. So some of the greatest minds in the world believe that there isn't any such thing as free will. Now, I look at that a little bit differently. With free will, it is possible to take charge of some of it. You can't influence everything in your life. You can't really change your genes, but you can change your beliefs. And as we were talking earlier, these beliefs, the subconscious mind making your choices for you. Well, free will isn't free. You have to take charge of it. So you have to take charge of how your subconscious mind gets programmed. You have to learn about these enculturation processes. You have to think about what you watch on TV or the circles of people that you move in. There is the expression that you are as successful as the 6 closest people to you. And that extends to lots of other areas. When it comes to dieting and fitness and health, you will be the average of the 6 people around you as a general rule. When it comes to financial success, it happens the same way. And all of these things just create beliefs that create your reality. But if you take charge of your subconscious mind in whatever way that you can, you pay attention to what goes into it, you don't take on board what people say. When you understand how it works, it all becomes a lot easier. But there is a whole spiritual aspect for me when it comes to the power of taking charge of your free will, in that when it comes to self-empowerment and training your mind, when you put into practice the things that we teach, then your life changes. If you believe it enough to do the work, your life will change. That is an absolute guarantee. But as your life changes, you become part of somebody else's experience. So if our subconscious minds are programmed by all the information out there is all going in, you are part of somebody else's experience. So someone looks at you and says, he was successful in this area. He tried out these techniques. He took charge of his subconscious mind, and he is achieving success in these different areas. Perhaps I can do the same. So to me, there is a huge spiritual component to taking charge of some of your free will. You can't do all of it, but the more you take charge of, the more you do, the more that you can do. So it keeps on growing within you, and it has an outward effect on everybody else around you. So you become the change, become the change that you want to see in the world. You can spread good ideas, not by preaching and teaching, but by being an example.
Absolutely. A significant part of the work that you and Eldon do revolves around forgiveness. Why is forgiveness so important?
What happened was, Eldon did some research at the Utah State Prison. What he found was, he wanted to create programs that would reduce aggression, recidivism. They wanted the inmate population just to be more responsive, as I said, less aggressive, nicer across the board. So Eldon researched and he interviewed lots of the inmates, and what he found was they frequently, almost always, were blaming circumstances for why they were in prison. So, perhaps their mom wasn't the best. Maybe mom was on drugs, dad was abusive, next door neighbor got them, doing petty crime. They blamed other outside sources for what had happened in their lives and why they'd ended up in prison. So Eldon, when he was working on the programs for the prison system, he chose the forgiveness set. I forgive myself. I forgive all others. I am forgiven. And what happens when you do that is that there is room that opens up for taking responsibility for your life. It reduces the shame, the guilt that can freeze you up in life. When you blame other people, when you are ashamed of what you have done in the past, it locks you up. It prevents you from moving forward. It doesn't give you a way out of it. When you can release all of that, then you have the ability to take self-responsibility. When you take self-responsibility for everything, then you have the ability to make change. Think about it, Victor. If a problem in your life is somebody else's fault, there's nothing you can do. But when you take responsibility for it, when you realize that you are part of the equation, that there were things that you could do, perhaps you could have walked away, perhaps you could have spoken up. When you take responsibility, then you have the ability to do something about your problems. It's very empowering to have that kind of approach. And I use that myself, Victor, the approach of self-responsibility. I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis after my second child was born. And one of the things that we teach at Progressive Awareness is, this whole idea of self-responsibility, but there is also this idea, so when we're looking at these kinds of issues, we look at histories, both significant histories in your life, significant histories of an illness, but we also look at what benefit do we get out of this. Now, that can be really difficult for lots of people to understand. Now, remember, I want to caution everyone, take this not with a pinch of salt, but with a big dose of practicality in there. Some things you can't take responsibility for. There are some areas where, bad things happen to good people, and that's not your fault. You didn't put yourself in that situation to be attacked. So, with that little disclaimer in there, when it came to my own RA, I took on board the teachings really thoroughly. So I looked at the subconscious aspect of it. So I worked with the Inner Talk program, Accelerated Healing and Wellbeing. I played every single night. And then I looked out there and it's like, okay, why am I creating this illness for me? So this is a technique that worked for me, Victor. Why am I creating this for me? What benefits am I getting out of it? Now, you don't have to share this information. The more you question yourself, the more you open up all of these different possibilities, the more possible answers come up for you. I think in my instance, it came down to the fact that my second child was a boy and I desperately wanted a girl. My entire pregnancy, I was focused on a girl. I thought it was a girl. The pregnancy was really different from my first pregnancy. I had a son before. So I was convinced it was a girl, and then I had a boy. But as most moms will tell you, when you have a child, when you have a second child, that oxytocin hit is huge. The love. I was concerned before I had my second child that I would have to take away from my first child some of the love. How can I love a second child as much as I loved my first child? But what happens is you have an explosion of love. Your love doubles. It's a very spiritual experience. So I had my son. Mama Bear came out in full force. No one's touching my son. This is my son. I loved him with every fiber of my being. I could love both of my children with every fiber of my being. So there was a bit of guilt stuck away in my subconscious mind, that I wanted a girl. And it's like, but I can't think about that because I love my son. Absolutely. So there was conflict that was created. And I believe that played a role. So as I looked at all of this, and that wasn't the only area that I looked at, but I looked at everything. I dug around. I changed the programming in my subconscious mind. And I managed to find my cure 15 months afterwards. I was on RA meds. It was an ugly time for me. But I came off the RA meds. I've not had to take anything for 23, 24 years now.
Wonderful.
But that is what real responsibility can look like. Once again, I do want to caution, this is not an opportunity to blame someone else for the circumstances they are in. That would be 100% wrong to say it's your own fault that you're sick, so deal with it. I don't believe in that kind of stuff. I believe absolutely in compassion. That is part of the whole experience. So if somebody else goes through an unfortunate situation, it's about self-responsibility. It's not about foisting that self-responsibility onto someone else. It's not appropriate. It's an empowerment tool, Victor.
Absolutely.
More than anything else, it's an empowerment tool. It's a tool you can use personally to make changes in your own life. It should not be taken any further than that. Any further than that would be wrong. Don't put it on somebody else.
My guest is Ravinder Taylor. Her brand new book, Mind Training, The Science of Self-Empowerment. We'll be back with more after these words on the Om Times Radio Network.
Humanity Healing International is a small nonprofit with a big dream. Since 2007, HHI has been working tirelessly to bring help to communities with little or no hope. Our projects are not broad mandates, nor are they overnight solutions, but they bring the reassurance that no one is alone and that someone cares. To learn more, please visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Imagine yourself being transported to India, to the banks of the Ganga and an ashram in Rishikesh. Visualize that you are welcome to satsang with an American sannyasi who shares the wisdom of her guru. Your visualization has manifested. Join Sattvi Bhagawati Saraswati for inspiration and transformation every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern on Om Times Radio.
Hi, this is Bill Maher. I can find humor in almost anything, but one thing I never laugh about is cruelty to animals. If you don't get the joke either, write People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, 501 Front Street, Norfolk, Virginia, 23510.
Back on Destination Unlimited, my guest this week, Ravinder Taylor. Her book, in conjunction with her husband, Eldon Taylor, Mind Training, The Science of Self-Empowerment. Ravinder, how does mind training work?
Mind training works by learning how your mind is trained, how it's programmed in the first place. It's about learning how your mind works, the mind-body connection. It's a two-way street. What we discover is that when you're happy, you smile. But when you smile, you become happy. There are ways to boost the happy chemicals. There are ways to boost the dopamine that can help you achieve your goals better. It's about learning all of these techniques and then putting them into practice. But it begins first, first you have to understand how powerful your mind is. And then you have to understand how it gets programmed. And then you have to take charge of it, take the reins, get into the driver's seat, and actually start tweaking all of these different aspects so that they work better for you. Mind training is it's not difficult work, as in, it's not like going to university and you have to do a full course and all of that. With the book, each chapter has exercises at the end. So at the end of each chapter, they'll tell you why the information in that chapter was so significant, what you're supposed to really gain from it. It summarizes it for you, simplifies it. And then it gives you exercises as to how to put it all into practice. Now, the exercises don't take a great deal of time, 5-10 minutes in the morning, 5-10 minutes in the evening, just so that you can create the habits required to make these changes permanently throughout your life. It's just at the beginning you have to be aware of it and you have to think about it. But we very much simplify that in mind training, because every chapter will have the exercises as to how you can incorporate it into your life. And as I said earlier, by providing the actual science behind it, it gives you a greater understanding of how it works. So therefore you can tweak it to fit your own personal lifestyle.
You share something that I found fascinating. You say that there are those who are addicted to failure and that there's a neurobiological reward system behind this. How can we be rewarded for failure?
It's to do with brain chemicals. That's that's one aspect of it. But when you expect to fail, when you always fail at something, and then that something happens again and you fail again, well, you end up getting a dopamine hit because you were successful in your prediction of failure. So, dopamine feels good. It feels good to the brain. You were right. You were right. And so you get this kick of dopamine. And so you actually program your system to want that same kick again. So you program it to fail again. It's a really sad aspect, I think, Victor, of, how this all works. But your mind, your subconscious mind wants you to feel good. It wants you to feel good. And if this is an important goal to you, if failure is an important subconscious goal to you, it's going to reward you for it. So being addicted to failure, the person who says, I always fail in relationships, or I'm not good at math, or I'm not good at this, they will reinforce that. And once again, it comes down to changing your beliefs, changing how you talk to yourself. How you talk to yourself is really significant, because the way you talk to yourself will influence the kind of life that you experience. And that's the basis of the inner talk programs that we produce. Think about it, Victor. If you're having a bad day, we talk to ourselves constantly. That conversation is always going on. But on a bad day, that conversation is going to go along the lines of, I can't stand this. I'm bored. I'm fed up. I can't wait till I get home. I hate this job. I'm just not good at this. It's full of that. When you replace that talk with positive talk that says, I'm having a good day. Life is good. I am good. I'm capable. I can do this. My colleagues are fun. My colleagues are supportive. When you change that self-talk, then it changes. It's impossible to be depressed. It's impossible to be depressed. If you think about that, when you're having this positive self-talk going through you, it's impossible to be depressed. And that is the foundation for the inner talk programs that we produce at Progressive Awareness. It's an automated way to change the programming from the inside out. And when your inner beliefs change, your outward life changes too.
You had mentioned earlier that you offer a technique for reducing the tension-induced rise of blood pressure.
Yeah. It's a combination of techniques. I go through in my training, I talk about some of these different techniques and the value. So there is an aspect there where we talk about the Duchenne smile. The Duchenne smile is more than just a basic smile. The Duchenne smile is the one that goes all the way up to your eyes, where your eyes all crinkle up. Now, I had come across research that talked about when you just put a pencil in your mouth, you put on, so that forces an artificial smile, but putting a pencil between your teeth will help your brain produce endorphins. It'll help you feel happier. And that sounded a bit crazy to me, but I dug in further into this whole idea about smiling and being happier and the effect that has on your life. There was 2 research studies I came across. One looked at baseball cards, one looked at high school photographs. And what they found was people who were smiling in those pictures, when they looked, down the highway, that they would actually live longer. You live longer, you live happier, you're more successful. But when it comes to living longer, they found that people with small smiles in these pictures would live on average 2 years longer. When they had the full Duchenne smile, they could live 7 years longer. Wow. So the Duchenne smile was an important part of it. And the other thing was diaphragmatic breathing. Diaphragmatic breathing, if you put your hand just at the bottom of your rib cage, where your diaphragm is, and breathe so that you stretch the diaphragm muscles, breathe slowly, breathe evenly, that has been shown to make you calmer, slow down your heart rate, just help you feel better, help you relax more. So what I did was I combined both of these techniques. I was going through a phase in my life that was really stressful. I'd lost somebody. There were just lots of difficult things going on at the time. So my blood pressure, which has always been excellent, went up. It went up crazy. I think the highest it went up to was like 180 over 100, which was amazing for me because I always have good blood pressure. So I was going through this traumatic time, and it's like, okay, I'm going to try this technique. So I did that. I put on the blood pressure cuff. I took a few diaphragmatic breaths, just slowly, evenly, feeling that the diaphragm muscles expanding. And it feels good, Victor. You want to try it at some point. But I did that, and I put on the big Duchenne smile. At that point, my blood pressure was like 145 over 80 something or other. And I've actually got the numbers in the book. But doing this technique, I watched my blood pressure drop around 30 points.
So what you're saying is diaphragmatic breathing, smiling with that Duchenne smile, and live 7 years longer, perhaps. That's a wonderful takeaway from the book. My guest, Ravinder Taylor, her book is called Mind Training, The Science of Self-Empowerment. Ravinder, one more time, please share with our listeners where they can get your book and find out more about you and your work with Eldon.
The books are available at all fine bookstores. So if your bookstore's not carrying it, they can order it real easily. You can get it directly from Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever you prefer to shop. You can learn more about me and my work just by going to ravindertaylor.com. There'll be more information up there, and there's more information about the mind training book in there as well.
Ravinder, thank you so much for joining us and sharing this amazing work and wisdom.
Thank you for having me, Victor. It's been my honor.
And thank you for joining us on Destination Unlimited. I'm Victor, the Voice Herman. Have a wonderful week.